What's up, world? I'm Mr. Vaca, and I have quite the exciting episode for you today because we have Helen Zou from Google for Education as a special guest to talk about some of the brand new features coming for Google to Education. So without further ado, hello, Helen.
Hey, Bill. Good to be here today.
Thank you so much for coming. So if you have been part of the Mahonison District for the past year, you actually might recognize Helen's name because we've been working with Helen for the past 2-3 months on some of these new features that are coming out, and I am thrilled to finally be able to share them with you. So Helen, your title at Google is technically you are one of the Chrome OS product managers across the education experience on Chromebooks. So to your average educator viewer, what do you do at Google?
So I joined Google just over a year and a half ago, and I specifically picked this team because I wanted to work on K-12 education. And what we really think about on the Chrome OS EDU team is thinking about how we can make Chromebooks better for both our teachers and for our students, as well as for our admins, given that it's already been wildly popular in education, but we're always excited to help make those Chromebooks more powerful devices for everyone.
So this video will actually be going live after the Google for Education Anywhere School 2022, which is on June 7th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. So you actually will probably be seeing this video after that announcement where you're going to hear about Cast Moderator and Screencast. Now, Helen, how did your team decide to create these two products?
That's a great question. It's definitely been years in development as far as just like continuing to think about how we can make Chromebooks better devices. But over the last 2 to 3 years in particular, we saw 3 main trends across Chromebook adoption, and that was really what drove Screencast and Cast Moderator. The first of those trends was a lot more schools were actually moving to one-to-one devices, where instead of having the shared cart model where students were maybe for one class period taking out that Chromebook and doing a little bit of typing and testing and then putting that Chromebook back. Instead, schools were actually assigning Chromebooks to students at the beginning of the year and having that student take that Chromebook to each of their classes, as well as even actually bring it at home with their backpacks. And with that, there was really a thought around, well, if students are actually carrying around their devices, what more can we be doing with that to kind of help empower their teaching and learning? From the second trend standpoint, we actually saw that teachers also were increasingly using computers. Before the pandemic, primarily devices were being used by most teachers before or after the class period, where maybe it was to prepare a worksheet or put together a presentation, and then after the fact used for grades or for sending out comments to the class. But within the pandemic, there was a lot of movement towards how do we actually use these devices as teaching devices or teaching surfaces. And then with the return to class, it became also a question of, can this become a wireless whiteboard where we have Chromebooks coming out that kind of can be flipped and then written on with a stylus and really offer a lot more mobility in terms of ways that devices can get used? And so that kind of spurred some more questions around like, well, if teachers are also carrying around devices, is there more that we can do? And then the last thing is just like an overall trend, I think, in the world, but also in schools, where video is increasingly becoming popular for teaching and learning. Like, I think we're all familiar with YouTube in the past decade, 2 decades. I actually don't remember how long it's been out. But YouTube has become wildly popular as a way to teach and learn. And then TikTok now as well for short form content and actually letting students go and share their own voices and their own ideas. With these 3 trends meshed together, we were thinking like, what are ways that we can connect all of these to make it easier for teachers and students to create and share content at scale? And so coming out of that, Screencast and Cast Moderator became these 2 features that we've been working on for almost a year now, or a little over a year now, to bring to you all today.
That is exactly what our district has been doing. You almost described it perfectly, which is why this is so important, all the work that you've been doing and really going to change the game. So you were talking about Screencast, and that, in my opinion, now that I've been using it for a couple months, it's so much more than just a screen recording tool. Can you tell us more about the automated transcripts, the ability to record, trim, and share?
Yeah, that's a great point. So Screencast is actually built off of an old screen recording tool that's still part of Chrome OS called Screen Capture. And that's just a built-in screen recording tool that lets you take a quick screenshot or record your voice as you're recording the screen itself, and primarily more towards short form content. What we did with Screencast was we took screen capture and kind of added even more to it. Specifically, the transcript, like you called out, is probably my favorite feature as well, where we've taken some of the powerful stuff that's already built into Chromebooks. Specifically, there's a on-device speech-to-text tool that takes your voice and actually turns it into a transcription, so that by the time the video is ready to share out, that your entire audio has been transcribed for you. And then when you share it, viewers can actually see both what was on that screen itself and follow along in the transcript. With that transcript itself, actually 3 things that I'm really excited about there. One is it makes it super easy to skim the video. I think we're all familiar with the idea of trying to remember, like, where in this video was the person answering this one question that I'm trying to find, and then you're playing in 2x speed or hopping around. But with the transcript, you can actually just quickly click through and figure out, oh, okay, this is the area I want to go to. Click that part of the transcript, and you'll hop straight to that video and be able to see the recording, as well as actually just follow along with the audio. There's also actually a search functionality, so you can actually search in the transcript too. So if you remember the keywords there, you can hop again straight to that point in the video. The second piece I'm really excited about is we've added in translation features. So taking advantage of some of Google Translate, we actually have the ability for a student to take that transcript and just toggle it into their native language. The audio will still stay the same, but as they're listening, they can kind of read along in their native language, and that's super powerful. I was actually an English second language person myself, and so like having that type of functionality would have been really useful when I was learning. And then the third is the transcript actually gives the ability for people who are creating the video to actually have an easier time editing and trimming. So instead of having to go and spend hours in post-processing, which is what we heard teachers were doing in the past, like the recording piece, relatively straightforward. Afterwards, going in and editing and actually trimming down a video into something 5 minutes, or into like a 5-minute segment could sometimes take hours. And so the transcript actually has the opportunity for you to go in and click particular sections, and then you can kind of edit that text, as well as actually just click skip entire sections, so that you can take a 10-minute video and trim it down to like, here's the 2-minute highlight that we really want to highlight for our students.
Or if you're like me and you make a bunch of mistakes in your recording, it's so easy to just click, nope, delete this spot. I made a horrible mistake right there. And it just picks up wherever you say you want that ending of the deletion to go. This basically takes, as you said, all the video editing skills away. You don't need to, because it's so easy to just find the exact spot that you want to start, or how to show what you're doing on your screen. But then even if you have a worksheet and you have a document camera hooked up to your Chromebook, you can just quickly hit the app that goes to the camera, show the worksheet that you're doing there. It also records your face, so you have like a little circle with your face in the corner, and it's so quick. You're able to share this video almost instantly, get the exact spots that you want, and it has been a huge help in all of our classrooms. Getting students to be able to understand what the teacher's saying, even if it's not in their native language, can help on so many levels, not even just the lesson, but their entire language skills, and trying to improve their communication. It's really exciting.
We've actually even heard parents sometimes wanting to use that as well, since sometimes students might be actually familiar with speaking in English, for example, that the teacher is teaching in, but then after the fact, parents want to see, hey, what did you learn in school today? So, and they might not be able to be as fluent in English. So sometimes parents are actually the ones going in and using that translation feature to watch a screencast so that they can understand what the teacher is teaching as well.
That is brilliant. That actually reminds me of one of my favorite uses that we've done this year with Screencast, which is for our end of the year like yearbook that we have our students do. They used to just write like in the yearbook, like, hey, it was great. We had a great year and all that stuff. But now they have made a screencast of their favorite memory of the school year. And they are then sharing that out to the rest of the class and the teachers. So that's like their digital yearbook, their favorite memories. Plus, on top of that, the students doing an end of the year book report, or they want to do a slideshow, or they want to show off the website they built in Google Sites, they are now, instead of doing a live presentation, they still are doing a live presentation, but they're backing it up with their digital screencast, where they can highlight what they are showing in their work and all the fun things that you would like to do.
We've also actually heard teachers getting really excited for screencasts to be used as a way for students to explain their thinking. We heard from a math teacher in particular sometimes when you just like see the final answer at the end, you're not clear if the student actually understood it or maybe they just copied it from their neighbor. And so actually recording a quick screencast instead, where they kind of talk through their work and really explain their thinking, can help the teacher understand, like, does the student actually understand how to solve this problem, or are there still some misconceptions that need to get corrected?
Plus, the students can do this at home during their homework time, or even during the weekend. If they have a question, they don't have to wait to be at school to use the Chromebook because they're taking them home. It's their digital notebook that they're taking to do their homework, note-taking, everything in between. Once the student hits the stop button on their recording, what happens next?
Yep. So as soon as you stop recording, that screencast actually gets automatically uploaded to Google Drive. And so there's no uploading time and you don't have to wait for it to download and then re-upload it into the Google Drive instead. So in that screencast app itself, you'll see a gallery of all of the screencasts that you've created. And there's going to be a share link on the top right corner, I think, where if you click that, you can actually share it with all of the other folks that are in your domain. And then that way it's very easy for you to copy and paste that into a classroom link or into whatever LMS you're using to be able to have other folks then go and view that video. And having that automatically saved to Google Drive, we've also heard is really exciting for teachers, because if they want to create screencasts and then share that for other teachers to later on use, it's already part of that school's shared domain. And so this becomes almost a way to create a library of content that teachers can share across the board, as well as for students to actually submit their homework or come up with homework presentations.
That would be great for our entire second grade team that might be learning about regrouping with addition. Now the entire team is able to share the same lesson if need be.
Yeah, I feel like for screencast, there's also the idea of, like, if different students have different learning styles, what the teacher can do is kind of create a slightly different screencast and then just have that as a library of, like, oh, if someone prefers learning a certain math trick this way versus a different way, they can kind of send out both screencasts and students can pick which one resonates better. And then if another teacher doesn't want to create necessarily both of those, they can kind of borrow from the first teacher and say, like, oh, this screencast already captures the way I wanted to teach this lesson anyway. So it becomes this reusable content.
You just sparked another idea. We do that now, but again, in like physical hard copies. If we are doing a leveled reader, say in a 5th grade classroom, we have our differentiated packets where, like, you have this lesson and this lesson and this lesson, depending on where you are in the reading level. But now we can just have it set up digitally where the students can click on that video instead of having to. And even if the students aren't sure of how to do a lesson, they can then rewatch that video over and over again to make sure that they understand what the goal is or their mission for the day.
When we initially kind of pitched this idea, the thought was, oh, well, instead of having a student kind of in class, like, furiously taking notes and then still not really remembering what the teacher was talking about, they can just go back and watch the recording of the lesson and be like, oh, okay, I remember approximately 10 minutes into the lesson was when the teacher was saying this, and go back and hear it live.
That was totally me as a student, furiously taking notes, forgetting what I wrote just 10 minutes before. I totally could have used this back when I was in school. Switching gears, let's now talk about Cast Moderator. And again, this is more than just a screen casting tool. There's a lot more that's going to help in the education setting. So tell me, Helen, what is Cast Moderator?
Cast Moderator really came out of what we heard from educators in particular, because they were going back into classrooms and, again, using these devices in new ways. But there was still this need to be able to share sometimes what was on their screen to what was at the front of the screen and have, like, a bigger monitor or bigger projector that all students could follow along on. What Cast Moderator does is actually let students and teachers be able to wirelessly cast to that shared screen from their own Chromebooks or from the Chrome browser. And gives teachers some control over who can actually cast. So before, I think there were some adoptions of different technologies where the cast device would kind of appear on the network and anyone across the school network could cast to that device, which didn't work that well in a school context because you had students from a couple doors down rickrolling the front of the screen. Eliminates that piece by not having the device just broadcast to anyone. And instead requires you to type in an access code so that only the students in the classroom can actually share, as opposed to letting anyone at any time.
Cast Moderator was exceptionally exciting on my end because I was able to see what I perceived to be the future of the classroom with Cast Moderator, because the teacher is no longer stuck at their desk or their what we would call dinosaur desktop, where they would have to be there to project onto the screen. Maybe they would have a wireless keyboard and mouse. But now with the Chromebook, the teacher technically never has to turn their back to the classroom when writing something on the board. And this was something that you, Helen, and your coworker Andy showed us live, which was using the Chromebook Canvas app, which is like a whiteboard basic app. The teacher was walking around the classroom, looking over at all the other students and writing on the app their math problems. She would then have the students come up to the whiteboard and write their answer in with a dry erase marker. And sometimes they would even pass the Chromebook to a student. The students are so excited to be able to share their work on the big screen, on the projector. Their motivation and enthusiasm is higher than ever before. Now, we know as a teacher, it's best practice to be able to share students' work. Students have that sense of ownership, and they then have a higher intrinsic motivation to do the best that they can. This absolutely showed that because the students were eager to share their work, and students that actually were sometimes nervous or timid to get up in front of the class and show their work, if it was on a document camera or actually hold up their piece of paper, when they're using their Chromebooks, they couldn't wait to share their work. Even if it was a writing lesson and they're showing their Google Doc, or if it's a Google slide and they want to do their presentation live through Cast Moderator. If they're collaborating on a math problem, they're able to do that easily. And even in our art classrooms, having the students show their digital artwork and how they are creating it has been massive. Are there any other examples that you've seen on how Cast Moderator can help in the classroom?
Yeah, those are all like great ideas or like great ways to be able to use Cast Moderator. And I'm really excited to keep hearing more ways that educators kind of adapt this for their own students. As far as that empowering students piece, that's the thing that we've really heard like teachers light up about. One of the teachers actually described their presentation day where it was very similar to what you just shared about the Google Slides piece. And like in the past, for our students to share their Google Slides, they have to share it in Google Classroom with me, and then I use my Chromebook or my device and like plug it in using an HDMI cable, but then I can't use my device anymore, and the student is trying to use my device, and it's just awkward for everyone. And so being able to have the students actually just drive their own presentations and actually present off their own Chromebooks has been super exciting to see and to hear more about. I think some of the other ways that we've heard Cast Moderator being used is actually like when they're in a pod and different students are actually all collaborating together. Sometimes it's hard to get everyone on the same page. So instead having one student actually be able to cast to a shared screen then puts everyone on like, okay, I'm reading this document at the same time as you are, and it becomes more of a collaborative environment to be able to like follow along and see the same thing instead of having everyone kind of work off their individual screens.
Yeah, and having that time, even though it could be sometimes 10 seconds, but in reality, it could take up to a couple minutes to have a teacher switch to the student's projection or have the teacher switch to the student's slide deck. Just taking that step out completely makes the class just run so much smoother. You don't have to worry about student misbehaving because you don't have to spend those couple minutes getting everything set up again. You just naturally going on to the next step.
One of the pieces that we've also heard Cast Moderators done is give teachers more control over who is casting, because I think all along teachers have wanted to empower students to cast, but part of the reason they hadn't is because they didn't have any way to stop a cast session. And so what we've done is two things. One, we're giving teachers a remote control so that at any time if a student does start casting and they want it to stop, the teacher can actually just click back on that remote control. It will turn off the cast and it will hide the access code so that the next student can't just hop on again. And then the other piece is for the using a code to connect piece. We're actually primarily promoting that for students. So every time a student connects, they need to use that code and then be able to start casting again. And then the code in the background refreshes, so you can't use an old code to connect. For teachers, we're actually adding an admin policy so that the device can get remembered. So after they've cast once to a cast receiver, that device name will appear in their cast list so that the next time the teacher can go in and just directly click on that name instead of having to type in the code every time.
Nice. I love that. Plus, you're having the students practice their typing skills, having them type in the code every time. Nice thinking.
I think, Bill, you told us a story that we really loved around how, I forget which teacher it was, but some teacher was saying that students got really excited about racing to type in the code as fast as possible, and how that became a reward at the end of the class was like, okay, we're going to play the like who can cast first game.
Yep. Shout out to Mrs. Smith in her 4th grade classroom playing the Cast Moderator login game. They do it at the end of every day. It is a reward. Again, an unanticipated perk of Cast Moderator. It's amazing. They love it.
That's why we're so excited to have folks like you guys testing it so that we can actually hear about like, is this working in the classroom? Because we're always here to learn and continue figuring out how we can make this better for folks in actual school environments.
Oh, thank you. And you have been so kind to our district. You truly take the feedback that we provide and make action and changes to the product to make it better. It's truly magical to see this happen live over the past year and a half that you've been working here. It's like getting to see the magic behind the curtain. It's really exciting, and not just for our teachers, but for our students as well.
Well, I feel like a lot of the magic comes from how excited educators are about like, how do we build the better experience? And then we're just here to really listen and understand, and then think about how we can turn that into stuff that we can build for all of you.
Now that we've all heard about Cast Moderator and Screencast, do you have a projected date for the release of these?
Screencast is coming to all Chromebooks at the end of this month. It'll be reaching stable, I think, June 26th. So as long as you have updated to the latest version, you'll be able to get Screencast on your Chromebook. Cast Moderator right now is in Trusted Tester, and we're still testing with a couple schools. We will have to get back to you on when Cast Moderator becomes a public launch.
Perfect. And if you need those links, I'll make sure to put them down in the description box below so that you can easily find them and sign up. All right, last question. Will users need Chrome Education upgrade to use Screencast and Cast Moderator?
Screencast will not need any type of upgrade. It's actually just part of Chrome OS. If you do use it using your managed account, it's easier for you to be able to share it with other folks in that domain because, again, it does sync to Google Drive in the background. Cast Moderator is specifically for managed users, so for managed Chrome browsers and managed Chromebooks. And so, yes, for that one, you would need the Chrome Education upgrade.
Thank you so much, Helen, for answering all of our questions about Screencast and Cast Moderator. I am so excited for all of our teachers and students to get their hands on it.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill, for having this session, as well as for just continuing to be such an avid tester of all of our features. We're really excited, again, to be building these things for you and for other educators that are listening in. And so keep letting us know how we can enable you guys to do more, because that is our overarching goal.